Have you ever tried filming a green screen video segment only to have it fail miserably when you went to edit it? What seems like should be a really simple process becomes incredibly difficult. Parts that you didn't want to be removed are disappearing, and areas that you did want to be removed are still visible. Sometimes the edges around the main subject are really fuzzy, or sometimes there's this greenish glow around the person in the foreground. Well, today I'm going to teach you how to set up your shot to get great green screen results with the help of my friends at Valera Screens, who are sponsoring this video and providing the green screens I'll be using. Are you ready? Let's do this. Now, there are 4 things that I believe you need to understand to create perfect results. The very first is the backdrop itself. If you're actually using a screen, make sure that you're using a material that's reasonably non-reflective and wrinkle-free. In this case, I'll be showing you 2 different Valera screens. Keeping your background screen as smooth as possible is your first step to success. In this shot, I'm using the Valera Explorer 90. It goes up quickly and creates a super smooth backdrop that doesn't have wrinkles, which can cause shadowing or uneven color areas. This is one of my personal favorite screens, not just because of its large 90-inch corner-to-corner size, but because of how quickly I can set it up and how little space it takes to store once I break it down. I can slip this right back into its case and under a bed or in a closet without any problem whatsoever. Now, the second thing you'll really need to pay attention to is lighting. One of the biggest mistakes I see creators make is they just put themselves in front of a green screen, throw some light on themselves, and assume everything will work out in the edit. That's the fastest recipe for failure. What you want to do is treat the background and the foreground, which might be you standing in front of the green screen, as 2 very distinct and separate subjects. Try to use fill lighting from multiple directions designed just to illuminate your green screen backdrop evenly. Using light sources from multiple directions will help keep that backdrop a more even green color. By reducing the amount of shadows, you're actually reducing the amount of difference in the color green you'll be removing from your shot in the edit. That way, your editing software is really only trying to remove 1 shade of green. So the more consistent you can make that color green while setting up your shot, the better the Chroma Key feature in your editing software will be able to remove it. Now remember, just lighting the backdrop isn't enough. Make sure you properly light the foreground subject as well, or that person will look lost in their own shadows. In this case, I'm enlisting the help of my son Jonas. If you can light both the green screen background and the subject in the foreground, you're gonna have a much better final product when it comes time to edit. The third thing you really need to keep in mind is distance. The distance between the subject and the background is often a huge factor. A lot of times, if the subject is too close to the background, you'll either get shadows cast against that green screen, which we know is a huge problem, or you might get some green reflected back onto that subject. That's something we call spill, or the color spilling onto something else other than just staying in the background. In this case, avoiding any shadows being thrown onto your green screen is so vitally important, as you can see here. When I put my hand too close to this Valera Explorer 90 green screen, it starts creating a shadow. In this case, my son was only a few feet from the Valera screen, but I had lighted it well enough that his chair didn't really throw any shadow of its own onto the green screen background. Knowing what to look for, you can balance the lighting and the distance together to figure out what works best for your space. I took some test shots with my phone just to see how the chair stood out against the background to help me understand how a camera lens was seeing my shot. This can be really helpful for figuring out if your distance and your lighting are working well together. Now, Valera uses their own Chroma Boost technology, ensuring enhanced green screen performance every time. So that helps out for this shot. Another thing that you have to be careful of is that reflection or spill that we talked about. If the subject is too close to the green screen, what can happen is some of the green hue from your backdrop can reflect back onto that person. One of the first places it hits is around the edges, and when you go to remove that green with your Chroma Key feature in the edit, you won't get that crisp edge around your subject that you're looking for, because your editing software will be recognizing that bit of green reflected onto the subject and will be trying to remove it. This is where you can get that fuzzy outline look to your footage instead of a nice crisp edge. So really pay attention to any of that green that might be bouncing back onto the subject. Another big mistake is having anything else in the foreground that might have the same color as what you're removing in the background. Wearing a green shirt or having green objects in the foreground can present a heck of a problem if you're removing green later on. Now in my home setup, my screen of choice is the Valera Creator 95. This is probably the fastest green screen you'll ever see set up, and it's perfectly designed for a vertical backdrop with controlled height. The entire unit rolls and unrolls right back into the base, eliminating any need for breaking down the green screen. Perfect for a creator like myself. Speaking of creating, once you have your footage filmed and into your editing software, you'll just need to activate the Chroma Key feature and dial in your edges for the perfect overlay. In my case, I happen to use Filmora, so I'll show you how to do this using Filmora 9. But you can do this with any editing software that has a Chroma Key feature. I'll just drop that footage in place, click on it, and activate the Chroma Key feature to remove the green background. I can use the color picker to select the actual green that's in my shot. I can also dial in the edge thickness and feathering to get a perfectly crisp line around him and his gaming chair. See how crisp the chair edges are? See how detailed the image of my son looks here? My son is a gamer, and a lot of gamers like to include their webcams into their streams and gameplay. But sometimes using the complete rectangular webcam shot takes up too much of the screen and blocks too much of what's actually going on in the game. Having no background around him when he wants to include himself in his gameplay means there won't be anything around him blocking more of the game than absolutely needs to be there. Just him and his chair. And we can control the size and placement of that using the Filmora editing software itself. But this isn't just for gamers. Green screen and Chroma Key allows a creator to put themselves into almost any environment and create any sort of set as a backdrop without having to remodel a room or build a new set to do it. Pretty cool, huh? If you have any questions about your green screen setup or Valera screens, drop them in the comments below and I'll be sure to answer them. I'll also leave links below to the Valera screens I used in this video if you're looking to buy a green screen that'll really deliver on your next project. Peace. Green peace.